So here we are. We're here to talk about how do we get the next 10 years right. And I don't think we can start without mentioning, as Charlie and Tabitha have said, the Black Lives Matter protests that are happening around the world. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And sometimes society has to reach a breaking point before real change can take root. I sincerely hope the time for change is now. These are incredibly challenging times, unprecedented in our lifetimes, and we are just over 5 months into this decade. As the pandemic raged through our communities and lockdowns were enforced, the entire global economy came to a standstill. And what followed was a profound economic shock, which is still reverberating now. But that shock also exposed deep inequalities in our society and how we care for our citizens. But through all these challenges, we witnessed the best of humanity shining through. And that gives me hope that as we start the recovery process, we can genuinely unify and bring communities together. If we're going to get the next 10 years right, we need leaders with empathy who care about their fellow citizens and are prepared to work to end injustice and create opportunities for everyone. Which brings me to the class of 2020. Those marvelous young minds graduating this month from our great institutions of higher learning. There are no ceremonies, no celebrations for them, and very few jobs are waiting. But they are optimistic and more determined than ever, and I admire them. And I believe that we should do everything in our power to help them achieve their dreams and become the generation that guides us to a fairer society and a healthier planet. Young activists like Greta Thunberg, who found her voice and with courage and conviction demanded the world pay attention to the threats of the climate crisis on the horizon. Or the students from Parkland, Florida, who bravely stood up to an entrenched US gun lobby to fight for their murdered classmates. There are millions of young adults around the world just like them, committed to solving the significant issues we face as a society, and their voices must be heard. Today, we have global communication platforms that connect us to over 3 billion people. Hugh, if you could advance the slide. Thank you. Theoretically speaking, nearly half the world's population can talk to one another, but not all voices are being heard. The ownership of these platforms is concentrated in the hands of a few, which should be deeply concerning in societies that cherish freedom of expression. But let's put that aside for a moment. These companies have a truth problem. They pander to the powerful, they fear regulation and retribution, and they turn a blind eye to those who are spreading vile conspiracy theories. The messages that get the most likes and shares are often linked to fake accounts that spread misinformation and normalize hateful narratives. And it turns out that the algorithms that maximize monetization are also quite effective at amplifying division and inciting violence. The leadership of these companies must help truth find its voice. It's time they live up to their ideals and show that their standards mean something. If we are going to get things right in this decade, the global communication platforms that link us all together need to become what they were originally intended for, places where we can engage in substantive dialogue about real issues facing our world, and where everyone's voice can be heard. Though technology propels us in so many ways forward, it's not a surrogate for society. We cannot abdicate our responsibilities. Civility, equality, and public discourse should not be determined or manipulated by technology. We, the people, not the state, and indeed not the internet platforms, are responsible for our own destiny. And we must constructively engage and define what is valuable to us and what future we want to build for our children. And let's remember that an iPad or a smartphone is not a substitute for parenting. And I am not being judgmental. We have all been there, but our children need us to be present now more than ever. If you could go to the next slide. While we are on the subject of truth, an alarming fact that you may not be aware of is that while the world has been locked down, child abuse and online sexual exploitation has exploded. And yet internet platforms, device manufacturers, pander to the nihilistic entitlement of the abusers with platitudes to protect their privacy, further enabling them to obfuscate their crimes. We need to fight back and ensure the internet is safe for all children, to learn, to dream, to communicate, to be inspired. That is the mission of the We Protect Global Alliance, an organization I founded. We believe that technology in and of itself is neither good nor evil. It's up to us to make it a powerful ally and to use its transformative power to heal and stop this heinous crime. What we experienced in the last few months brings home my next point. If you could change the slide. We have never been more aware of the fragility of human life. All human beings deserve to be healthy. It's a fundamental human right. Over the past few months, we've watched daily news recount the number of souls who have lost their lives to COVID-19. And what's transpired forced us to recognize deep inequalities in our society. We learned that the chance of catching the virus was much higher for the everyday heroes whose jobs require interaction with the public or taking care of others in hospitals and care homes. We are forever grateful to their bravery and kindness. We also learned that our ability to fight the disease is often correlated to the economic circumstances of the patient and whether they have access to quality health care or if they take medicines to treat comorbidities common among ethnic and disadvantaged groups. This pandemic has laid bare inequalities in our society, and we can no longer ignore them. So why can't we just build a world where no disease goes untreated? Well, I believe that we can, but that world will not naturally emerge. We must actively create it. Today, thousands of diseases have no treatment, and yet we spend tens of billions each year supporting a broken system that leaves millions of patients without hope for a cure. This has to change. Patients deserve better. We must leverage breakthrough technologies and make the best use of the world's vast and ever-expanding universe of biomedical information for the benefit of all. If you could change the slide, please. At Benevolent AI, our team is mission-driven to preserve human life, and I'm immensely proud of the work that we do. But the technology we build is just a spark. By augmenting human intelligence, our AI and machine learning tools empower scientists to discover life-changing medicines. And when faced with the escalating global pandemic, we turned our AI and drug discovery platform toward identifying existing drugs that could be used to treat COVID-19 until a vaccine is developed. Our platform identified a treatment that has both antiviral and anti-cytokine properties, which has now entered randomized clinical trials in the United States and around the world. This experience has reinforced our belief that innovative thinking combined with purposeful technology can truly lead to better outcomes for patients, which brings me to my final point. To get the next decade right, if you could change the slide. To get the next decade right, technology needs to start working for us, not the other way around. We need to stop believing that tech is imbued with some kind of superpower that one day will democratize benefits for everyone. 30 years into this internet revolution, and that still hasn't happened. And simply wishing for it isn't going to make it so. It's time to recognize the real political and economic forces at play and demand a future that serves us all. And the message for the tech industry and governments, we must ensure that the AI we are building is magnanimous, not malevolent, that bias is kept in check, and that the future serves us all equally. The diversity of data we use to power our AI and machine learning must represent society as a whole so that no one is left behind. But let's remember, it's always darkest before the dawn. Throughout modern history, when things seemed most desperate, leaders emerged to raise society. And today, leadership is not who is prime minister or president. It's about all of us caring for each other and finding our voices and defining a clear path for the future. We have just 3 days together at the virtual CogX. Let's make the best use of it to the fullest extent. Let's unite behind concrete ideas and spark change so that the recovery can begin and we can get back onto the path of progress. And yes, let's get the next 10 years right so that we can have a society for the next 1,000 years.